Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 17th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises, and that the purpose of the meeting is to continue the examination of the operation of Caribbean Airlines Limited, CAL, with a specific focus on customer services and to explore what might be some of the possible solutions to challenges being faced by the company. The role of the committee is to help. And I want to reiterate that this committee is here to help the enterprise. One of the key roles here is to examine the issues which arose out of your written responses to the committee's questions, and to aid CAL in improving its operations, resulting in a more efficient, effective, and organization. This meeting is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, live on Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can participate by sending comments relating to this engagement with Caribbean Airlines via email to parl101@ttparliament.org or on our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter @ttparliament. I would like to now welcome the officials of Caribbean Airlines, and I would like to invite you to introduce yourselves.
Chair, good morning, and committee members. Thank you for having us today. I am Shamir Ronnie Mohammed, Chairman, Caribbean Airlines.
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. I'm Jag Mohan Singh, Acting CEO, substantive position, VP Operations.
Good morning, Chair, committee members. I am Colville Carrington, Vice President, Maintenance and Engineering.
Good morning to the Chair and to the members of the committee. I am Dion Legor. I'm the Head of Corporate Communications.
Good morning to the Chair and the committee. I am Adrian Agarat, Senior Manager, Financial and Revenue Accounting.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I am Marina Chase, Acting CFO, substantive position, Senior Manager of Treasury Management.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Hyacinth Guy, Vice President, Human Resources.
Morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Nalini Lala. I'm the General Counsel and Corporate Secretary.
Thank you. I'd like the officials of the Ministry of Finance to please introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I am Lisa Phillips, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much all for coming. What am I? Oh, forgive me. Please forgive the chairman.
That's okay, Chair. Good morning, Chair and committee members. I am Malam Mohammed, Senior Business Analyst, Ministry of Finance.
Excellent. I would like now to introduce the members of this committee. I would like to begin that process by beginning with members on my right.
Yes, good morning. Wade Mark, member.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I am Cherry Ann Critchlow Coburn, member.
Morning, Lester Henry, member.
Brigadier General Ansel Antoine, retired, member.
And I am David Small. I'm the chairman of this committee. And I want to welcome everyone to this meeting. This is the third inquiry we'll be having with Caribbean Airlines. And I want to indicate that the first thing I want to deal with is to indicate that after the last meeting, the committee requested quite a bit of information. And I want to indicate that the committee is very pleased that the Caribbean Airlines Company complied completely and totally with all of our requests. And we're very happy to see the information that was supplied exactly as we requested. However, Madam Permanent Secretary, I have a question for you. In your experience, and I want the room to benefit, and I want the public to benefit, you here as PS Minister of Finance effectively represent Corporation Sole, the owners of Caribbean Airlines. Am I correct?
Yes, Chair.
What is your understanding regarding the committees of Parliament requesting information from entities?
My understanding is that they have to comply.
So, Madam Secretary, Madam Permanent Secretary, the reason I'm asking this is that the committee feels it has to make this abundantly clear. We have received several bits of correspondence from Caribbean Airlines that point to a troubling misunderstanding of the remit of this committee. And I want to quote from the standing orders for those members of the public and for all members who are viewing and listening. This committee is formed based under the Constitution, under Section 66A of the Constitution. And out of that, there are standing orders. And I wish to quote that the standing orders allows the committee to send for persons, papers, and records. There's no flexibility or anything for any entity to suggest, as Caribbean Airlines has said on more than one documentation, that they conducted to assert a review of our requests to ascertain irrelevance. We felt that was out of place. You can't ascertain irrelevance of the request of the Parliamentary Committee. Madam Permanent Secretary, would you be surprised if an entity wrote that to the committee?
Yes, I would be.
I think some guidance is needed because in repeated correspondence, kindly be advised you're in the process of reviewing your request. The committee struggles to understand what would lead an entity for whom the Parliament is requesting information. The reason that you're here is that you're a state entity. You have to report to the Parliament. That is part of your remit. No one should be writing to say that you're reviewing our request. We take particular concern with that. And I think, Madam Permanent Secretary, the reason I'm addressing that to you is that Caribbean Airlines management seems not to understand, so I'm not even going to ask them. I think what is required is for Ministry of Finance to sensitize them that when, and not only Caribbean, but all entities perhaps, to understand that when the Parliament Committee requests information, you do not have the leeway to review our request. I wanted to make that abundantly clear. Because, and in particular, at the last hearing, Madam Permanent Secretary, there was a request. I made this position very clear at the last meeting. The current chairman wasn't there, the vice chairman was there. Subsequent to that meeting, the vice chairman, I believe, wrote. And in the wrote, in his letter, he indicated that based on the position adopted by the chairman, this is not a position adopted by the chairman. The Parliament Committee requests information, you have to comply, full stop. It is not a position adopted by me. It is not personal to me. This is something of the Parliament. So that somehow or the other, it is clear that the Caribbean Airlines management, signed by the chairman, signed by the vice chairman, signed by the general counsel, different letters, different dates, have seemed to have a misunderstanding that they have the ability to review our request or to think that the chairman is demanding information from them. No such thing. And the reason I'm treating with this because it seems that the understanding is not clear to Caribbean Airlines and their management. And I want to make it abundantly clear. It will not be tolerated. So, Madam Permanent Secretary, I trust with the provision of information, you will have the necessary discourse with this entity to at least make sure that we're all aligned. It's not that the committee is trying to be difficult, but the committee feels that some of these communications were a level of disrespect. They demonstrated disrespect to this committee, and we're not having any of it. Not from Caribbean Airlines or any entity. And I see the shock look at Madam Permanent Secretary's face. The Madam Permanent Secretary seems perplexed that an entity could even write this. And we have taken the pains as directed by the members of this committee. This is not my personal view. This is the view of the committee. We wanted to make sure that Caribbean Airlines understands this very clearly for this and for any future iterations. So thank you, Madam Permanent Secretary. I am happy that you are here to help us, and I suspect that you will need to have a quiet word with this particular entity, because I think some of the people in the management don't understand their remit regarding the Parliament committees.
I'm so guided, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Permanent Secretary. It's always a pleasure to have you here. So, I want to begin in terms of the various areas that have been placed before us. We want to say that Caribbean Airlines is a major entity in the country. It's our national airline, and we all have a vested interest in seeing Caribbean Airlines succeed. I want Caribbean Airlines to succeed. Every member of this committee wants Caribbean Airlines to succeed. So that I want us to understand what we're about here. The objective of what we're trying to do here is to try to get information to help the company streamline and improve its operations. The operating results, the financial results are not what we were expecting, so something needs to change. So, I want to explain to the members of the public for the first area I want to deal with, and I want to preface my comment. The company has asked for several bits of information that is provided to us to have those issues be dealt with in camera regarding because of the commercial sensitivity and other sensitivities, and the committee accepts this. And we've agreed, the committee has agreed that there's certain issues in there that definitely we will not be asking in the public hearing. But however, we believe that even within that context, there's things that we can ask general questions that do not necessarily impinge or reflect the confidential nature of a lot of the information. But there's questions that I think will reveal information that we believe is important for the public to understand. So, the issue I want to deal with, firstly, is the Lufthansa report. The existence of this report is something that seems to have stymied the management, because at a previous hearing, the committee requested this report. What was provided initially was not the report. Subsequently, the full report was provided. It's about this thick. I have it in here, and I read all of it. It's a huge document. And I want to say that one of the communications in that respect is that I think the corporate secretary or general counsel advised that the management did not know about this full document. So we find that difficult to process. That we looked at the cost of this study. The company spent $2 million on this piece of work. An extensive terms of reference was prepared by the company, and the company was engaged, and they prepared a report. But based on the documentation provided to us, the management, all of you are sitting here, and I think most of you would have been present at the time, the information from the corporate secretary is that the company was not aware of the existence, or they're now seeing it for the first time. We have a difficulty understanding how we could spend $2 million of taxpayers' money, and then nobody is able to evidence seeing the report or knowing anything about it. So I want to direct this first question to the acting CEO, because the chairman would have been post facto this process, and it would be difficult for the chairman to have any significant input. And I want to pose this to every member here from the committee. This was a report that the entity commissioned, you paid for, and based on the communication sent to this committee, the management is saying we were not aware of the existence of this report or words to that effect. So I would like the acting CEO to help us understand how could a company spend $2 million of taxpayers' money, yet the management is claiming that they didn't have this report. I'm asking the CEO. I don't want to hear from the chairman as yet.
Chairman, members, the large report which was sent to the committee was sent initially to only a couple of the management team at Caribbean at the time. Those two management members are no longer with Caribbean Airlines. The current management team did not see a report at that report at that time. Coming out of the large report, a smaller report was done, and that was presented to the management team, the rest of the management team, and presented to the board and approved by the board. And hence the reason we had not seen the large report.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Does everyone who's representing Caribbean Airlines, do you have the same position as the CEO? I want this to the record that no member here of the current existing team are aware or would have had laid eyes on this document, because we struggle to understand. Because what the CEO has just told us is that we spent $2 million, the report was sent to two persons, and then when they left, by the time they left, nobody knew anything about it. And a condensed version was presented in management, and that was the end of that. Am I capturing your comment correctly?
A condensed version, a 40-something page document, was presented to the management team, was presented to the board, and approved by the then board.
And perhaps just to help, the people can see this is the full report. So this is a little more than 40 pages. Yeah. So and we're thankful to have the report. but so that something is wrong somewhere in your systems, because the committee struggled with that. Let me ask a different question. And as indicated, the committee will not delve into the details of the report. However, the chairman of the committee is free to comment. You think that the report presented by Lufthansa is an excellent report. If it's one in my short time here in the Parliament in terms of consultants doing work, this represents value for money. This is one of the few times I can say I can look at a report and we spend 300,000 US, close to 2 million TT, and I am seeing value for money. Because the rigor of the analysis, along more importantly with the detailed spreadsheets that analyze the various elements of the company's operations, represents a whole lot of work. So that I would like to understand now from the chairman, now that you have the full document, what is your initial thought on the plan to use this document, or if you're going to use it at all? Because the document clearly outlines a strategic roadmap for the company across all areas of the company, from company structure down to fleet. And it clearly outlines a pathway to profitability, so that from where I sit, this document is a gold mine for Caribbean Airlines. But that is only the chairman's respectful view. I would like to get Caribbean Airlines' view on this document, now that you've had it for a few weeks.
Chair and committee members, first of all, I would like to express an apology on behalf of Caribbean Airlines for any misconception in relation to the submission of our documents. We have sought advice. Having obtained that advice, the company understood and clearly understands the role of this committee, and therefore we felt compelled and will continue to provide all requests coming from this committee. As you would have indicated in your opening statements, it's over 140 questions that has been submitted to us for written submissions, and we have complied to the best of our ability. And I would like to reassure this committee that any future requests will be responded to now that we have had full clarification in terms of the company role, their authority, and their jurisdiction. In relation to the report, I have now had sight of the entire report. Yes, it is a report that clearly outlines a roadmap that we need to follow. I have expressed my concern to the management team that this report has been in existence for a little 2 to 3 years. And somewhere along the way, the company, and by extension, the management of Caribbean Airlines would have fallen extremely short in terms of implementing the recommendations in this report. And did Caribbean Airlines implement those recommendations, I can assure you that as an organization, we would be in a far better place than where we are today. And therefore, we would urge the management team, having reviewed most of the recommendations, mind you, I can say that there are certain elements in there that we have our reservations about, but most of it we believe is very reasonable and would bring positive performance to the airline. And therefore, we would continue to focus in terms of implementing these recommendations that are before us from the consultants.
Mr. Chairman, have you shared this with the line agency, line ministry?
Chair, there is still some ambiguity in terms of whether or not this document lies within the Ministry of Finance. We are seeking, based on obtaining information from the previous board in terms of what may have been handed over to the Ministry of Finance, but it is our intent in any which way to utilize this document in our updated strat plan and submit it again, perhaps for the second time, to the Ministry of Finance.
I would urge you, Mr. Chairman, the Ministry of Finance has a small group of people called the Investments Division. Part of their responsibility is to monitor the operation of state enterprises. from the committee's analysis of this document over the weekend, most of us didn't sleep because it's a nice, short, small document. This document, quite frankly, represents a blueprint for the turnaround of the airline. And I and this committee remain astonished we are astonished that it virtually disappeared from the system. Because the question we have to ask is this a case of corporate amnesia? Because we can't, this is not a document you can hide. It would have come, it would have been received, and based on what we've been told, 2 persons received it, and then nobody ever heard about it again for nearly 2 years. But this document, now that you have it, outlines are clear, and here's what is important, the rigor. They presented scenarios. I'm not going to get into the details that you requested, but it follows a process that I, as a professional, understand. The rigor applied, they're looking at the various scenarios, the mix of the aircraft mix, the types of service offerings, the whole issue of accessibility, a whole series of, they've drilled down to every part of the company's operations. And for each area, they've come with a recommendation. And I think this should be a core document that should be shared with your line ministry. The Permanent Secretary is here. Madam Permanent Secretary, are you aware of the Ministry of Finance having any copy of this document?
We are not aware of the document. We don't have it on our records.
Well, I would urge a discussion with your line entity, because from the work done by the committee members here, this is a document that allows for the charting of the course of the airline, and it has some fundamental recommendations. I don't expect you all to accept everyone, but I think that inside of here allows space for persons to say, we think that there's a lot of things in here that could help the airline, and I would venture to say that if this had been adopted in 2014, the airline very likely would have been profitable today and not be a fetter on the purse of the Ministry of Finance. But that's gone. We can only look to the future. I have one other question on this before I go to my other area. I want to say that whoever's idea this was to do this work should be commended, whether they're with the company now or they've left. Because when I peruse the terms of reference spoke to every aspect of the company's operations. And here's what that tells me. The company prepared a terms of reference to ask someone to help it with every area of its operations. It's a tacit admission that you have problems in every area of your operation and looking to try to ways to fix it. What happens with consultants, you bring them in to deal with specific areas. You send out a terms of reference that will the entire scheme of the operations of Caribbean Airlines. So that suggests that there are problems or issues that need remedying across the entire span of the operation. So I think that this is something I'm heartened that the chairman has indicated that the board is looking at it and plans to implement some of it. But I would urge respectfully that you keep your line ministry in tune with this, with what you're planning to do. I have one other issue, members of the chair. I have 2 big items before I deal with, I allow other members, and then I have several other small items. And I want to set the frame for this. This has to do with the process for the tendering of the ATR aircraft. The Honorable Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago made a public statement, and I want to quote from it. And he says, the issues of proper procurement and value for money are important to the country's taxpayers. And that is the frame for it. When the committee requested a copy of the tenders, what was the process used to purchase the ATR aircraft? The committee could only assume that you would have been following the manual provided by the Ministry of Finance, Public Services Manual, and you would have done an RFP, issued tenders, and you would have gone through a process of whoever tendered, they would have scored them and ranked them, and then you would have made a decision based on the submissions. What your reply to us was that there was a cabinet minute, essentially saying to purchase the ATRs, and then there was an in-company and internal document that essentially there was an executive summary supplied to the committee that went through the justification, and all the justification did, in my respectful view, is to sustain the status quo, because that justification suffered from a fundamental flaw, fundamentally flawed internal justification for that. And here's how you can match it up when you look at it as opposed to what Lufthansa did, by example. what was done as the internal company justification for continuing or for switching to the ATR, it measured what the Q300s were doing as opposed to what the ATR could do. And it did not leave anywhere, it did not do any scenario analysis. It just compared the existing routes and lined up the aircraft. And while I have had some experience in this, anything could be justified. If you want to get a particular outcome, I can write it for you. I've had enough experience doing it. So that document is fundamentally flawed, because I would have thought that the management of Caribbean Airlines, in choosing to change its fleet, would have looked at scenarios for the future growth of the airline. The internal document speaks to nothing like that. It says, these are the current routes, and if I use this aircraft, fuel efficiency, passenger load, da, 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 da. And it doesn't say, for instance, that if we choose a particular aircraft, we may be able to expand to different routes. We may be able to drop the jet on this route and put a turboprop on this route, for example. And that is what I would have expected from an internal document. Instead, the internal document is a vanilla document to justify the purchase of the ATR. And that is based on the analysis of this committee. We looked at it, and it is clear that analysis 101, you have to do scenario planning. I don't expect to see that from someone who, I don't know who prepared it, I didn't ask, and it doesn't matter. But if this is what was used by the company to say, listen, this is the decision, then it is fundamentally flawed. Fundamentally flawed, because there was no rigor in that analysis. It's unfortunate that I can't be everywhere, but when I look at things, these are the things that jump out at me as an analyst by training and someone who's been in this business over 25 years. And when you do work for persons, there's no way someone could bring that and say, we've done an analysis, and this is what it is. It's poor, fundamentally flawed. So, I just want for the record, because we've noted the response, is it that the company is saying that in terms of the tender process, tender documentation, you do not have any in your records? Mr. Chairman. Take your time, we have all morning. Madam Permanent Secretary, I hope you're taking note. They're conferring.
Chair, that's correct. There are no tender documents in our records. How this process was done?
Mr. Carrington, I want to stop you there. What was the actual purchase price of the ATR aircraft?
$98.8 million for the 5 aircraft, and there was about US, and there was about a $6.9 million cancellation for the 4 aircraft that we did now.
So about 105 million US, give or take. So what you're telling this committee and telling the population of Trinidad and Tobago is that $700 million of taxpayers' money was spent, and there's zero documentation that you can find or exists within the company now to show that some proper process was followed. Am I correct?
Chair, we have documentation on the process that was used for acquiring the ATR aircraft.
You have documentation?
On the process that was used.
Could you enlighten us? Because we requested the documentation and the process and the tender documents. The committee is very clear. There's a document here that speaks to the process that has to be followed for tendering. And all we're saying, there's a process here, you should have gone through that process. Did the Caribbean Airlines use this process, yes or no?
Chair, there are only 2 large turboprop aircraft in the world that are certified by Western authorities. They are the Bombardier Q400 and the ATR 72 and 42 aircraft. There's no other aircraft certified by Western authorities.
So, all right, but help us then. If you didn't use that tender process, outline for us the process that was used. And I'm sure the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Finance would be very excited to hear.
The 2 manufacturers, Bombardier and ATR, were requested, similar to our RFI process. to submit proposals and demonstrate the aircraft. Right? This was done. These demonstrations were evaluated by an internal team within Caribbean Airlines, and based on that, the ATR aircraft was selected.
Excellent. So at least we have some clarity now on the process that was used, so that an expenditure of $700 million, there was no, and I accept that there's only 2 manufacturers. But however, we requested documentation on the tender process. You could have said no tender process was used. Here is the process that was actually followed, and detail exactly what you've told us. That would have helped the committee. Because from where we sit, we have no information. And unless you give us information, we can't create it. So let me ask a different question. Because inside of your submission, there's a policy for all inside of your submission, one of your submissions, you submitted as a policy for all supporting documentation regarding transactions being provided for auditing, and you keep those records for 6 years. And that you had indicated the office holders who would be responsible for safeguarding all company financial transaction documents. So that what the committee was seeking is to understand what documentation do you have to show that some process was followed. Because you've told us, but we've not laid eyes on it. So, and it's not that the committee is doubting you. So we will have to request now what you have, because we don't have anything. The document that you provided was the executive management summary of a proposal that is fundamentally flawed. That document, that executive document is a document that cannot stand any rigorous analysis, because it was in my respectful view, and in this role I speak only as the chairman, it was tailored to suit a particular outcome, and it was deliberately done so. Could not have been accidental. And if you look at the work that Lufthansa did for every possible situation, they presented more than one scenario for use of aircraft. And that is what I would have expected from Caribbean Airlines to say, well, listen, for use of aircraft, this is what we could do. Instead, this is what we could do, this is what we're looking at, full stop, we recommend this. So the committee will be writing to you to request what available information you have on the process that was used, given that it's now come out that there was no tender process. What you're saying essentially, you had pre-qualified or parties who were the only 2 providers. You wrote to them, you requested proposals, they submitted proposals, you did an analysis of those proposals, and you made a decision. Am I correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Good. So, but you've helped me today, because prior to this, the committee did not know. All right? And I want to be clear, because the committee will request all the information, and I want to draw members' attention to page 84 of the wonderful Ministry of State Enterprises Monitoring Manual. And on page 84, item 15.2, it speaks to the fact that the relevant purchasing section shall be responsible for maintenance and storage of all procurement files, including electronic files, in accordance with Section 55 of the Proceeds of Crime Act. There's criminal penalties for not having the information we're requesting. And I want to drive home how serious this is. You are supposed to keep records of all major financial transactions. They're not supposed to be somewhere around somebody got it, only 2 people got it, and then disappeared. That's not good enough. There's civil and criminal penalties under the Proceeds of Crime Act, as indicated in the manual here. And I hope somebody in your group would have a copy and they would acquaint themselves, because it's our Bible here. So, thank you very much for helping me with those 2 areas. I now open the floor to Senator Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, when would you be able to make a copy of your strategic plan available to this committee? Because remember, when you were last here, you said it would be ready in short order, and you would make it available to the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, and we would also have a copy. In light of this very important report that you have sent us, could you tell us how soon or has that plan been completed? The strategic plan?
Member, Caribbean Airlines does have in its possession a strat plan for the period 2016-2018. This plan is in the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance have asked us as a new board to please relook in terms of whether or not the board would like to implement this plan or revise or provide an updated strat plan. Having had sight of the Lufthansa report, which is very extensive and detailed, and I must say very useful in terms of providing a roadmap, we certainly would want to ensure that our 2017 to 2019 or perhaps 2017 to 2020 strat plan utilize the very helpful recommendations in this plan. That being said, work have commenced, and we believe within 6 weeks we can have that document or less out to the Ministry of Finance, subject to their approval, and then forwarded to this committee as an approved strat plan. But it is of extreme urgency and on our high priority of items to finish.
So when that strat plan was submitted to the ministry, the company or your board did not have sight of this particular report. But could anybody explain that? Because you have been there for about how many months now?
Close to 5.
5 months?
Yes.
How long that report, that strat plan was submitted?
September of 2016.
Oh, September of 2016. So that was submitted before your arrival. Okay. So the whoever submitted that plan, maybe the CEO could help us here. Whoever submitted that plan without reference to the Lufthansa report, which also dealt with a strategic plan. May I ask, did you get a strategic plan from this consultancy, Lufthansa? CEO?
No, Lufthansa did not provide a strategic plan. We did have that copy of the smaller report that came out of the large Lufthansa report. Out of that, there are initiatives in the 2016-2018 strategic plan that we have been working on.
Okay.
And that those initiatives have actually come out of the Lufthansa plan. If we look at the Lufthansa plan and what we have implemented so far, and I don't want to articulate right now on the individual items, but there are at least 8 major items from that Lufthansa plan that we have put in place.
So that plan is of no value if you were to submit it to us, because you're now reworking that plan, Mr. Chairman. If that plan were to, if you were to make a copy of that plan, you were saying, I'm saying that you are still called upon to rework that plan. So you'll have to resubmit that plan. What time frame you anticipate?
Approximately 6 weeks.
When that is up and you are completed, would you be kind enough to make a copy of your plan available to our committee?
Chair, if I can seek clarification, is it that our strat plan must be approved by the Ministry of Finance first and then disseminated, or is it that we can?
I'll have to seek guidance from the chairman of.
Yes, I've been advised by the secretary that the normal process is that the plan needs to be approved prior to submission to the committee. But our understanding is this plan already has been operationalized. So this is where there may be some confusion, because if the plan has been started to be used, then that presupposes then it would have been approved. But that's something for you, this is the discussion between yourselves and the line ministry. The committee remains guided. The normal process is that the entity will submit the plan, and once sanctioned by the line ministry, then they can disseminate the plan. That is the normal process.
So would you say that that plan has not been approved, the one for 2016 to 2018?
That is correct.
Okay. How many consultants do you have right now at CAL?
Can we provide that response in writing?
Well, you should be in a position to indicate to us if you have 3 sets of consultants, 5 sets, or 1. And you should be able to tell us the name of the consultant, and you should be able to indicate to us what is the nature of the consultancy, and details can come later.
Member, unfortunately, I do not have that information available at this time. We are prepared to submit that in writing to the committee, including the scope of their services.
I would like to say that Senator Mark has inquired, and I take a point that perhaps a lot of the details, but perhaps what Senator Mark is doing, do you have any significant work being performed by a particular consultant? Significant, there's probably a range of work, but what I think Senator Mark is getting at, in the remit of the entire management team here, there may be persons who are aware of consultants doing specific areas of work that they could enlighten the committee with some basic information, and of course you will follow up with the details after. Am I correct, Senator Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I can perhaps offer a bit of information. At this point in time, we have 2 consultants on board. One is assisting us in evaluating the operations, or mainly what we consider the role and function of a chief operating officer, and in terms of what is required in performing such functions. And the second would be a consultant in relation to our finance operations and how we better understand our budgets, our utilization, persons responsible for accounting on specific lines, finance, etc.
This is an airline that has had a lot of iterations, incarnations, but I would estimate in terms of existence, it has been around for 70 years in different manifestations. BWI, CAL, 10 years ago. And we still have to locate consultants to deal with these matters that you have identified. Could you provide us in writing details, the name of the consultants, the terms of reference, the amount of income or revenue or fees that you have to incur? Mr. Chairman, I also like to inquire, does CAL possess any kind of succession planning in its overall operations? Do you have a succession planning framework for this airline?
Member, can I ask Dr. Hyacinth Guy, our VP Human Resource, to answer that question, please?
Yes, okay.
Member, yes, we do. We implemented, we have had a policy for some time, but in early 2016, we implemented the framework, and we sent out guidelines which gave line managers information on how we will maintain a succession plan. We did the work to populate the document and to sensitize the management as to how that should be done and what are the follow-on activities in a succession plan, training and development and so on. And that document is now in the organization. We presented it to the subcommittee of the board, the Human Resource Committee, at our last meeting. So that framework is now in place.
The reason why I ask this, Mr. Chairman, is that I saw that in CAL you have close to 74 persons, with 48 of them in Trinidad and Tobago, and some of them abroad in Miami, New York, but they are far past the statutory age that CAL has set for persons in its employ, which I understand is to be 60 years. So I asked the question, Mr. Chairman, as to if there is a robust succession plan, how do we explain a situation where we have over 70 persons in these operations called CAL who have passed their 60th birthday and they are languishing between 63 and rushing to 70. And I don't understand, what is the basis for these people overstaying at this airline, given the policy that you have just explained. Could you clarify for us?
Yes, Member. First, yes, you have before you a document which details that we have 74 persons who are over age 60, system-wide. If we look at that document, we would see that of the 74, 26 of these people are in line stations. And in line stations, you have varying retirement dates. So it's not like in Trinidad where we have 60. In some of them you have 60, but in others, United States, for example, there's no retirement age. So people continue to work once they are fit and healthy. So we have 26 of those. Then we have our pilots who can go up to age 65, and that is by the collective agreement that we have with them. They retire at 60, and then they are retained up to age 65 on a contract. The next highest number you would find would be in maintenance and engineering. And if you look at Caribbean Airlines, you said it a little while ago, it's a young airline, it's just 10 years old. It takes 7 years to train an engineer. It takes 3 years for a pilot to get the 1,500 hours to be able to operate fully on the aircraft type that he's operating on. So a lot of these qualified people came over from BWIA, and they came with the certifications and authorizations, particularly in M&E, maintenance and engineering, which allowed us to function effectively and function safely. And we now have had to build up our succession plans and our entry-level plans in terms of developing people internally so that they could now take over from these people. We have implemented now robust training and development programs in the M&E so that the trainees that we started taking on a few years ago will now move into engineers. And when that happens, then we can see these people with authorization moving on and out of the organization. But generally, it's because it's such a young organization and it takes so long to train somebody to bring them up to a qualified and authorized level.
Mr. Mark, Senator Mark, if you just permit me to interject, I have a follow-up. At the last inquiry, Ms. Guy, you indicated that based on the numbers, almost 30% of the current Caribbean Airlines pilot body are between 55 and 65 at the previous inquiry. We flag that as a big number. And in the subsequent information you provided, you have over 20 captains who are over the retirement age.
60.
I understand your TALPA plan, but my question is about the planning basis. Is it that the airline is planning, the planning basis for your succession, is it 60 or 65? Because the view is your state enterprise. Every person working in every other state enterprise, the retirement age is 60. If you have an agreement with TALPA that they can continue, is it that they can continue? Is it mandatory that they continue? This is what it's not clear to us. What is your planning basis? And respectfully, we submit your planning basis should be 60. And that the plan is at 60, pilots should get their retirement and be told if we will call you if we need you. Is it your planning basis for pilots 65, and at 65 then you decide, okay, let's action the plan, because a planning basis of 65 means pilots in the train have to wait 5 years longer before they could graduate. So I want to understand, what is your planning basis? What do you use? Do you use 60 or do you use 65?
For pilots, we use 65, Chairman, because that has...
Inside, is it mandatory that at 60 they must continue until 65?
The collective agreement says that they retire at 60 and they would be offered continued employment on a contract basis.
I am asking, is it mandatory for the company? Let me ask it a different way. When a pilot reaches 60, does the company have the option to say, thank you very much, you've completed your service?
Not according to the contract, no.
So, so what you're saying, at 60, Caribbean Airlines must continue to employ a pilot until he's 65?
Yes, yeah, unless the pilot wishes to leave at 60.
Madam Permanent Secretary, the Minister of Finance, are you aware of this?
No, Chair.
Is this something that is usual, or in your experience? That the airline, the entity has no flexibility, that they must employ people until 65?
This is new to me, sir. The normal retirement age in the state sector is 60 years.
Is Caribbean Airlines not a state entity?
Yes, it is.
But this is where the disconnect is. The disconnect for this committee is that if there's a rule that applies, it should apply. And if somebody negotiated that, then they need to say, well, we've negotiated this, but this cannot be. The company, there's no way that Caribbean Airlines should be mandatory at 60 days, 60 years plus 1 day, you get the gold watch or the whatever you normally, and you thank them for the service. Because I recall, Ms. Guy, at the last hearing, you indicated you had an advertisement for, I think, 6 positions, and you get over 100 applications. So that would suggest to this committee that there's at least 100 persons out there who meet the minimum qualification, who would like to have a job. And given the current scenario, I would think that a pilot at 60 what you're saying, that people are collecting their pensions and then earning a salary again. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
So that,
once they retire, they can collect their pension.
If as a rank and file member of the public trying to get a job to earn one salary, I think it's something that the company has to look at just from the optics. You have someone who's served, nothing wrong with their service, they're earning their pension, and then they're being paid. I don't know what the salary is being paid. Is it a different amount from their finance, or is it aligned to their final salary?
They continue as they were before with the rank and status.
Mr. Chairman.
Is this, forgive me, Senator, but I want to drill into this because this is of deep concern, because somebody has negotiated something in Caribbean Airlines that is not sustainable. You are saying, 1, you must employ them to 65, and then 2, you must pay them as at the rate that they were when they retired, and they're earning a pension, and so you have 2 streams of income. That is untenable, and it's certainly going to form part of the recommendation of this committee, because we have a situation, Ms. Guy, Mr. Mohammed, the country is in an economic crisis. Many people out there looking to find a job that pays them 1 salary, 1 stream of income. Some people have to work for 2 jobs just to survive. Yet you are telling us that people are collecting a full pension and salary at the highest level for 5 more years, and the company must do it. That is not something that I am shocked to hear that. I am shocked that whoever the parties and then the Ministry of Finance seems to be unaware. In terms of this negotiation, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance, seems to be unaware of this practice. And this is something that, in the view of this committee, needs to end forthwith. There needs to be some discussion that we are a state enterprise. We are mandated by the state to follow the regulations. And for your planning basis, for your succession plan, it should be 60. If, operationally, we require somebody and you make a special case, that's fine, but not mandatory. Ms. Senator Mark, you can have the floor back. I think the chairman has said quite a bit on this.
Mrs. Guy, how many pilots would be enjoying that facility, meaning they have crossed the 60th mark, but they are still employed 62, 63, 64, and then how many pilots are currently
Yes.
enjoying that arrangement?
We have that in our submission, member, and that's on page 11.
Page
It
11.
adds up to about 18.
About 18. Now, would you...
19.
Oh, 19. Would you want to give us a copy of that agreement that you mentioned between TALPA and the airline? And would you probably want to have discussions with your line ministry for some proper interpretation
Yes.
of that provision? Because as the chairman admitted a short while ago, that based on your own submission, the last round, there are young, bright, qualified pilots who are looking for jobs, and they can't get it at CAL because apparently there is a monopoly that exists at CAL as it relates to 60 and above until 65. I think it's something that requires some proper interpretation, and I would advise that you liaise with your line ministry and get some proper interpretation to this provision that you have mentioned.
Senator Mark, I want to just go again. In your submission here, which is why I was shocked to hear, Ms. Guy, that it's mandatory. In your submission here of dated 26 April, and on page 7, you say, I quote, all employees are retired from permanent employment at age 60, but may continue to work on a contract basis up to age 65, depending on organizational needs. That does not suggest that it's mandatory, and they say the provision has been practiced by CAL's pilots and is now entrenched in the agreement. So what you said here is that you may, and then it's subject to organizational needs. What you said here today to the committee is that it is mandatory. You must employ a pilot beyond the age of 60. So that, because I am the committee struggling with that. This is nothing against the over 60s. As someone approaching 60 myself, I want to stop working at 60. But I think that given the optics of this, given the reality of the job market in Trinidad and Tobago, pilots already earn well. I think it's unfair, untenable for someone to be collecting a pension and then be earning salary at the highest levels of Caribbean Airlines. And if it's based on organizational needs, then fine, but it cannot be mandatory. It cannot be mandatory, in my respectful view. It has to be that your planning basis is everyone at 60 years plus 1 day. Thank you very much. It was appreciated. We appreciate your service to Trinidad and Tobago, and give them the gold watch or whatever is the procedure in Caribbean Airlines or the golden airplane. And based on your submission does not say what you just said. Certainly, Minister. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Guy, I'm having a little difficulty internalizing this being entrenched in the collective agreement, but they operate under a contract. It is either they are covered by the collective agreement and they receive the same benefits and the same terms as everybody under the agreement, but how does a union negotiate a provision that is outside of the collective agreement when it is operationalized? It is not making a lot of sense to me. So if you could explain that for me, please.
We have to put it in context, again, going back to the age of CAL and the fact that when it started, you had all the pilots coming from BWIA. And the practice of retaining pilots beyond 60, that was from the beginning of Caribbean Airlines. Caribbean Airlines has always retained pilots, even before we had a collective agreement, beyond the age of 60 in order to maintain the schedule and to keep its operations going, given its newness. When we were negotiating the collective agreement, the union asked that this be put into the collective agreement, and we resisted that. In conciliation before the industrial court, we were advised that given this is already a practice, that if this went anywhere, it is going to be part of the terms and conditions. We recognize that our retirement age was 60, so we did not accede to the union's request to change the retirement age to 65. So what we put into the collective agreement is that pilots will retire at 60, but the practice of retaining them beyond the 60 until 65 will continue at the same terms and conditions.
So at age 60, they retire, they get their full benefits under their pension. When the contract ends, do they come and get a gratuity benefit also?
No, no.
So they just get their flat salary?
They just get
and
their
that's it?
flat salary, and they retain their seniority for the purpose of bidding and vacation leave and so on, which is very important to a pilot.
They are not covered by the collective agreement?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are covered by the collective agreement. And when you say covered, you mean as employee?
Yes.
Yes, they're covered by the collective agreement.
So when you spoke in terms of their being under a contract, I understood it to be separate and apart from the collective agreement.
No, contract employees could be covered by a collective agreement. An employee could be defined as fixed term or open-ended.
So they are still governed by the terms of
Yes,
the collective agreement.
they are,
Could we please, Mr. Chairman, through you, have a copy of that collective agreement?
Sure.
Thank you.
Two final questions before. Mr. Chairman of Carl. Okay.
Yes, there's a follow-up questions to the 74 people, persons over 60 years of retirement. I know you said that there's a young airline, etc., and technical people, etc., will be required because of training and so forth. But when I go through the list on page 11 and 12, I am seeing people like upholsterers, tool clerk, workshop technician, sub-supervisor, air condition technician, nurse are the people who are being retained. In Miami, you have a cargo coordinator who is 78 years old, and an engineer is 73, customer agent 68, customer agent 70, right? So it doesn't go, these people are not technical people that need to be retained, right? And yet you are keeping people way over the retirement age when there are problems in terms of employment for other people in the country.
Okay, remember, again, the issue with the line stations, we have to abide by the retirement age in the particular area. And the specific area that you point to, Miami, in the United States, there's no retirement age. As long as the person is fit and able to do the job, then that person continues to work. It would be discrimination if we were to retire them on the basis of age. So that remains there. And there are other line stations where the retirement age is beyond 60.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman of CAL, could you verify whether sometime last year, 3 737-800 aircraft and 2 767 Boeing long range were returned to their owners?
Yes, I can confirm 2 767s and 3 737s was retained.
Could you tell us what would have happened to the staff that you would have needed to maintain and to operate those aircraft? Have they been absorbed into your workforce, into the staff of CAL, or have they been made redundant because of the fact that you no longer have need for them, seeing that these aircraft are no longer in service?
There's been no redundancy, notwithstanding the return of those aircrafts.
Now, you appreciate that if this organization is to progress, you cannot have a situation where it is non-profitable. It depends on the state for subsidies every year, and you have a situation where personnel who would have been needed when you had a certain amount of aircraft availability, but in the absence of those aircraft, we still have the same employees. Have you really done a manpower audit to determine the real needs of your organization?
Remember, you have actually answered the question there. And very early when we joined as a board, we highlighted to the management team that we found that very glaring, that you would return 5 aircraft and you would continue to have the same level of manpower. We have ordered at the board level, and part of the function of the consultants who are here at this time is to do a manpower, not just in terms of operations, but system-wide, in terms of what is the through requirements of persons needed at Caribbean Airlines to make it what I will consider, or where we need to be, which is a very lean operation for us to be commercially viable.
Mr. Chairman, your audits, financial audits, or let's say your audited accounts, you have a couple still outstanding up to 2016. I think from 2012, if I'm not mistaken. How many outstanding audited financial accounts Carl would not have submitted to the Ministry of Finance? Or when was the last one submitted?
Member, I have been advised that 2013 has been submitted, 2014 is completed, and we are waiting one bit of response from our other shareholder, the government of Jamaica, in terms of what the shareholder agreement offers, and that is their right to subscribe to additional shares. Last week, we would have received communication from the government of Jamaica seeking an extension in terms of whether or not they would accept or decline that right. 2015, that audit, and 16 is in train. So we hope once the government of Jamaica responds in short order to immediately submit our 2014 accounts.
And 2015 and 2016, where are they?
They're in the process of being audited at this time.
And what time frame do you anticipate for completion?
Okay, so for 2015, that will be around June. We should have that completed, and around August, we should have 2016.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Minister Coburn, you wanted to talk? Senator, no, that the graders, Minister allows. Senator Henry.
Morning, everyone, once again. Just to follow up, I have a separate question, but just to follow up on the retired Brigadier General Einstein's question about people like lead painter and upholsterer and so on, of the above 60 group. Do these people get the same treatment like the pilots, or is that agreement strictly for pilots, where they, once they're over 60, and because that's the cutoff age for retirement, do they get the benefits package, their full benefits package, and then continue getting a salary? Is that true or false?
For those persons who are not pilots, there is no compulsion to hire. So that is really on the basis of whether we need those positions, whether we have someone that is immediately available to take up that position. So at the point in time that that person retires, we look at whether there would have been sufficient plans in place for continuity, and if there isn't, we do two things. We begin to put those plans in place, and we will retain the employee on the same terms and conditions until such time as we find someone to replace those positions. And yes, it's, we see engineers, we see technicians, but we also see, tool clerk and lead painter. Painter is a specialized function in the airline industry. We see upholsterer. Again, a lot of work to be done on a day-to-day basis in terms of repairing things, and that is a fixed-term contract. With respect to those positions, we will not have these positions on our head count by the end of this year, because we recognize the shortcomings in these areas, and we have put things in place to replace them. With respect to the technicians and the engineers, we have a group of trainees that we took on in 2015 who are coming towards the end of their preparation to assume these new positions in the technician role and in the engineering role. So whenever, and we do these on short-term contracts, so whenever it ends, we look and say, are the trainees ready? How far do we have to go again? And we do that analysis before we make a decision to extend a contract. We anticipate that within a year or two, we will not have this situation, because we do now have a robust training and development function that is now well documented. We have people going through various stages of their training program, and we can see how this will unfold in 2 or 3 years' time.
Okay, but I'm still not clear on whether they get their full benefits.
Yes, they would get their pension. And then, yes.
Okay, that was the gist of what I was...
Bearing in mind the pension started in 2009, and it's a defined contribution plan.
So does anybody ever leave this company? All right. Sorry, from that to a different line of questioning, back to the issues surrounding the ATRs. Given that it's already out there that we bought these planes, right? We didn't, and we paid cash according to reports in the press for several years now. If there are problems with the plane and we don't like what we got, has there been any attempt to sell these aircraft, or any plans, discussions on the way to let's say, put them up for sale? And if that is so, what is or was the obstacle to the planes being sold? Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I just know that it might be somewhat technical for yourself, but I'd also like to hear from the CEO on this issue. But you can chime in as you wish.
First of all, we did purchase the aircraft cash. Having got the aircraft, we have been operating the ATR for the last 5 years. Part of the Lufthansa plan was the defensive strategy. There was the building strategy, and without going into too much details on the plan itself, the defensive strategy did indicate keeping the ATR. For several reasons, the management team stayed with a defensive strategy, and kept the ATR. So, and if we look today at what's occurring with the ATR, everyone in the operation knows the ATR aircraft a lot better now. We have been operating over the last 6 months at least without any incident. We have had very few delays with the ATR. The ATRs are operating well. And if we look at the technical dispatch reliability, we are meeting or bettering dispatch reliability. It's 99.41%, I believe it is.
So,
6 trees ago.
Added.
Just 1 second.
Just to add to what the CEO was saying, our technical dispatch reliability right now is at 99.63, which is above both our benchmark, which is 99.58, and industry 99.37. So right now we're doing pretty well with the ATRs.
Okay, I'm quite happy to hear that. I mean, that's one of probably the first real good news out in this hearing so far today. But that really wasn't the question. The question was, were there discussions for the sale of the aircraft at any point, or is there anything on the agenda like that? You know, that was my question, not the improvements in the technical efficiency. Right? I mean, you could say you change your mind. It's okay, but I'm just asking if there was.
Currently, there is no discussion on the sale of the ATR. We have looked at the ATR. We did another review of the ATR in 2016. And given our current mission with the turboprop, the ATR, 80% of our operation of the ATR is on the air bridge. The ATR is the better option, even with that 2016 report.
Mr. CEO, and your response points to the issue. Your response says, given the current operation, and that speaks to the justification that led to the push to the ATR, because it seems we are focused on what the airline is doing now. And I want to ask Mr. Carrington, how would you describe the operational performance of the ATR from inception of purchasing the aircraft to now? You had an aircraft that is new. By comparison, you have the 737. Some of the average age of those planes are 15, 18 years, and they're operating no problem. Is the experience of Caribbean Airlines with the ATR typical of a new airline, a new aircraft being provided to an airline? I want your candid assessment. Is it something that you would have thought was good, or is something below your expectations? They don't have to be detailed, but did it meet your expectations, or is it below your expectations? Mr. Carrington.
Chair, we had challenges on inception because we were the third operator of the ATR aircraft. So we did have issues, but I think we pretty much over that now.
That is not what I asked. In terms of if Caribbean Airlines tomorrow purchases 3 brand new 737s, what would be your expectation in terms of operation? Fairly smooth operation?
Fairly smooth.
And if that doesn't happen, you would say that it didn't meet your expectations.
Yeah, that's correct.
So that I'm asking, you purchased 5 new aircraft at 700 million TT plus.
Mm-hmm.
Did it meet your expectations operationally?
Not initially, no.
So for how long has it met your expectations? Okay.
We had initially quite a few nuisance warnings and wiring issues,
Mr.
which we had to sort out.
Mr. Carrington, I want to stop you. The first hearing with this entity, the chairman spoke to an issue regarding the cockpit fire warnings. And the chairman was very clear that, I think his wording was that these were just warnings, that there was no fire. And the chairman was very clear on the public record here in this committee, in this chamber. And I'm saying, when you are dealing with an aircraft, I don't get a nuisance warning. If there's a fire warning going off on an aircraft, it suggests, if you tell the passengers that, the passengers would be panicking. There's a reason you wouldn't tell pilot would not announce, hey, no, I'm letting everyone know there's a fire indication on the panel here, and I'm turning back to Trinidad. There's a reason you don't do that. So I don't view it as a nuisance. I respectfully disagree with your characterization. In the same much I disagree with the chairman's characterization as it was just a warning. I have been on enough aircraft. I have done a couple million miles with aircraft. And I have had experiences rolling down the runway and the pilot said, whoa, something is wrong here, I'm stopping. Okay? And as a passenger, you don't get that comfort. But no one has said, oh, it's just a little light going off, is a nuisance. I don't like that characterization. I would expect someone of your caliber to say, listen, we've had some operational challenges. The warnings we haven't, at the last hearing it was clear that some of those challenges we haven't gotten to the root cause of the problem, but we think we've overcome those challenges now. So I'm trying to help you here because I struggle with your characterization as it's a nuisance. Because if ATR hasn't fixed the problem or found the root cause, then it can reoccur, in my respectful view. So I had to jump in there because I think this is something that, while it's good now, I am on your side. I want it to remain good. I want it to remain good, and you can maintain 99 point whatever percentage of reliability and availability. But this is something that Senator Henry started the question in, and I want to be very clear. We want to help Caribbean Airlines, and if there's a problem with the aircraft, we would prefer that Caribbean Airlines look for a solution. And if that solution means changing the aircraft, which is where Senator Henry is going, then make that decision, rather than trying to put a plaster on it to hold it together for whatever reason we don't know. So I will allow Senator Henry to continue now.
I just have one final follow-up on that, and just to get a response from the board and perhaps the CEO, in terms of if you were to decide on selling the ATRs, let's say you take a management decision to sell the ATRs, is there anything problematic in the contract or the way the planes were acquired that could cause difficulty with that decision?
Member Henry, I don't have the contract before me, but the aircraft belong to Caribbean Airlines. So we have the property right in the aircraft. So if the company were to decide to sell it, it of course would need our shareholders' permission to dispose of an asset. But in terms of the acquisition of the aircraft, I can't recall any clauses which prevent the owner of the aircraft thereafter disposing of it.
Stop there.
Minister Kuba.
In the submission, you would have provided us with information on positions at the managerial levels, the criteria for those positions, and the qualifications and experience of the incumbents in those positions. And the committee has noted with some concern that there are incumbents in critical and key positions who do not possess all of the criteria. Could you give us some indication as to what is the policy at CAL and why we have a situation such as this developing or taking place?
Member, yes, we provided a list as requested by the committee. It outlines the criteria. That criteria is coming from the role description and the qualifications and experience of the people who are in the position. When I look at this list and the people who are in it, I am comfortable that the people who are in the position are suitably qualified to hold the position and to carry out the role. And that is because you may look and see that there is a requirement for a first degree, but you would look at the person who is in the role and you would see not a first degree in some cases, and I think there are about 6 cases, but you would see significant years of experience in the particular field. And we consider that years of experience combined with qualifications would also constitute a qualified person in that position.
The committee's concern stem from where we would have noted person may have been in a technical position, qualified for that technical position, and then transitioned into a more managerial position where you have to be strategic and all of that. And we did not see any evidence of that management experience. That would have been a red flag for us, and it raised concern. I understand that oftentimes experience is sometimes, for me, even better than the qualifications. But there are some positions where we believe that the incumbent needs to be all round. And that was the level of concern that we have. So we wanted to find out, what is Carl doing? Or is this a historic position and going forward it is going to change? Or are you going to continue to operate like that?
Well, member, I understand what it is you're saying, and I am hearing that once we are putting somebody into a managerial leadership position, that there must be a level of preparedness in that competence, which is really all the leadership and managerial competencies. We have recently launched our training and development program. We recognize that there are some persons who are in key positions who may have gaps, and this came out when we did our succession plan, because that required us to assess the strengths and the development areas of all of our managers and key persons in key areas. And we use that information to prepare our training and development plan. And we have implemented that plan, and we have managers who are on coaching programs, leadership programs, and other development programs. There may have been instances in the past where people may have gone from technical to managerial without the proper preparation, but we have identified where there are gaps, and we are bridging those gaps right now.
Thank you, and I'm heartened to hear that you have those things in place. I was just wondering, is there a constraint in that your promotion policy says that you must promote internally from inside? Is that the case?
Oh, no, it doesn't. It doesn't, no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I have a short question. Inside one of your submissions here, because we've gotten several submissions, so we have quite a bit of information. There was an item described as performance-related incentive payment. I would like to ask, what is the structure of this incentive payment, and how often is this paid every year, and were these payments approved by the Ministry of Finance? Could someone help me with that?
Chairman, can you point me to the specific area you were...
I actually pulled it out of the document. One of the documentation replied that you had a performance-related incentive payment, and I can't find, because I have too much documents. So my question was, but to your knowledge, does the company make incentive payments?
No, Chairman. We have the company, as far as I'm aware, has not made an incentive payment since I've been there.
You've answered me very, very clearly on that issue. And this is where I want to flag another issue. And the Parliament is very, tidy when it comes to keeping records. And I want to thank the ladies who sit over there and unobtrusive in the room. So we usually have a Hansard, which is a verbatim report of all that was said. And if I go back to the Hansard of the first hearing on January the 9th, I recall earlier in this session, I asked if anyone had sight of the Lufthansa full report in terms of all of the various recommendations. It was clear that it came to 2 persons, and then it disappeared. No one knew anything about it. But in the Hansard here, and I want to quote, that we move towards the assistance of Lufthansa in developing their strategic plan, and Lufthansa, the 2015 Lufthansa plan recommended that we reduce our fleet, and since we've stopped the operation of the 767 fleet. So that someone here is making, and it's almost immaterial who, but a member of the Caribbean Airlines team is telling the committee in January, before you said you had access to the report, that the Lufthansa plan recommended we reduce our fleet, and we've since actioned that recommendation. So this is where the committee is struggling sometimes, because we get information, and then when we hear from you, and similarly when Ms. Guy spoke to the mandatory issue about we get a submission or people say things, and then when we marry it to what is on the record, there tends to be a gap. So I'm not going to try to personify anyone right now, What the committee is seeking is consistency of response. That if we ask a question, we're expecting that if the response in your written documentation says one thing, that your verbal would line up with that. What we've found is that in this instance, in January, someone is saying the Lufthansa plan recommended, and very clear, recommended reduce of fleet, and we've since actioned that and stopped the operation. This is on the Hansard permanent public record. But today, when I ask, did anyone have access to the full report, I got a unanimous that no one has seen the report until I think you all recently acquired it. And these members of the public, as somebody, I'm doing this deliberately, to help the members of the public understand the challenges we have in the Caribbean Airlines. We are challenged, and I don't want a response. I'm just tabling it. I'm tabling it because the committee is trying to help you. But if you are inconsistent with your responses, we are not sure which one is correct. If you understand, if someone is telling you about these two different stories about the same issue, we as a committee have to make a call, because we don't know which one is actually correct. Only the speakers on our side knows which one is correct. And the committee, it is a concern of the committee. I want to move to another issue, if you'd permit me.
Chairman, may I respond on that?
No, I don't want a response. I think that because this happened more than once. This happened, there were several instances where what was either said before and then said subsequently, or what was sent in writing and then spoken to subsequently, there were differences. And if the difference was a small difference, okay, fine, but the differences were huge. So all we're saying is we would try to work with you as best as possible. But I think there's a challenge with consistency of response. And I'm only addressing that to the chairman, not to the other persons. I'm not going to personify anything here. I'm just saying on the public record, one thing was said in January, and on today, another thing was said. And that's all we're saying. And it just causes a challenge to the committee in doing our work, which is to try to help you. I want to move to another issue. We're starting to run out of time, and I have several issues to ask, but I want to ask about this one. The team of the Parliament, one of the questions we asked before, and again, I want to reiterate that the committee respects the committee's position regarding the confidentiality of some of this information, but we still reserve the right to ask general questions. In the same way we treated the wonderful Lufthansa report. The Parliament team here did some tremendous research over the weekend. And we asked a question on the last submission regarding the use of the cockpit jump seat, or jump seating as they call it in the American system. And under the FAA, there's something called the Cockpit Access Security System, which is a nice system where all pilots register. So the committee understands that it's a normal operational use within the airline industry for a pilot to use the jump seat, even for personal use. We accept that as per your submission. We understand that pilots, and then of course there's going to be operational uses, so that I suspect that an operational use would trump a personal use. If there's two pilots want to go on the jump seat on a particular day, and one is to move a body from here to another station, then that would trump someone just wanting to go whatever, to do whatever. But however, some of the data presented is troubling. It's troubling because your policy is clear, but I think we want to respectfully suggest that it needs more definition. According to the data presented, a member of the team in 1 year made 100 individual cockpit jump seat flights. 100 individual flights. Now, I understand and we accept that a pilot can use the jump seat for personal use. But I would think that in a calendar year, 100 individual flights is a lot. That is a lot. The question we ask ourselves is probably one every 3 days. Does this person actually do any other work? If you're making 100 flights in a calendar year in the jump seat, and I suppose this would be in addition to your 20 free tickets that you're allowed. That number jumped out at us. And in another instance, we found in there that from January to April, one individual had already made 30 individual jump seat flights. This, we understand, is for personal use, but there's a suggestion here that the system has been abused because it's just too loose. I can't see, or this committee struggles to see, a pilot working at JetBlue American Airlines doing 100 personal flights a year. How is that even possible? And we're not intending to personify. We're dealing with the policy issue. So I'm going to ask Ms. Guy, because these numbers jumped out at us. They're huge numbers. I can't conceive of doing 100 flights a year, in addition to being a pilot. So that you're saying this person is a pilot, and then they're doing 100 additional flights per year for personal use. This is almost, I know there's struggles in trying to be with Uber, the car service, but it's almost someone is doing Caribbean Airlines as their own personal air Uber. It can't be. This is smacks of abuse of the facility. It should be a privilege, and given that it's, in our respectfully, it seems to be being abused, perhaps it's time. Perhaps it's time the airline consider some controls on this. 30 individual flights in 4 months is high. Miss Guy, could you help us? Is this normal or is this not unusual? I would like, because we don't have all of the information from all of the pilots or all the members of staff, but you have to help us. Is this normal or is this something that is out of the ordinary?
Chairman, all employees in Caribbean Airlines get 20 rebated tickets per year. They pay a fee and they use that ticket.
Taxes,
yes. We did an analysis of the usage between 2012 and 2016, and we found that on average, persons are using between 6 and 8 of those tickets per year. Now those...
And those are rank and file staff members?
Yes.
Okay.
And employee, all levels. We did it in accordance with categories of staff. And that is the average per person. Now that is the 20 tickets that persons are entitled to. That is part of your terms and conditions of employment. Yeah. What you are speaking to there, that is an industry practice where pilots are allowed to use the jump seat. That is not a term and condition of employment, but an industry practice and some convention. So that does not come through the HR, what we manage in HR in terms of terms and conditions of employment. And there's a different procedure for accessing that. So we would not have sight of the frequency of usage. But if I am to guess, you look at that kind of usage, and you may want to look at, I would hardly think that it is abuse. It might be that people travel between Trinidad and Tobago, and you would find a lot of usage between Trinidad and Tobago because they may live in Tobago and work in Trinidad. And that happens. It could be that we may have to look at and see if the person is perhaps working in Trinidad and probably living somewhere else, which has happened.
Mr. Chairman, seeing that Ms. Guy is not privy to all of the details of this, the committee sat and we looked at this information. And we are regular, normal people. I probably do, myself, Senator Mark, we do, if we combine all of our travels, we don't get anywhere near sitting on a plane 100 times a year. So we just mentally struggled with seeing numbers that suggest or clearly point to one employee in 1 year doing 100 jump seat flights, and this individual is a pilot. So this is that person is flying normal routes and then taking 100 personal flights a year, which is entitled to, or she's entitled to. That's not the issue. But we think that somewhere in there, that sounds like a lot. Mr. Chairman, what is your view?
Chair, I share your same view and the same concerns of the committee.
Because the committee will have some clear recommendations on that. And given your policy that you've provided that it's for personal use, fine. And it's an industry practice, we accept that. But we would like to say that 30 individual flights in 4 months suggests that someone or some parties are taking advantage of a system where the rules are fuzzy. And perhaps our recommendation would be to tighten up that rule. That rule needs to be tightened up. And in this case, very likely Peter will pay for Paul because of some parties deciding to abuse the system, the rules will be tightened up and everyone will fall under a new system. Because that is we just cannot fathom 100 flights, even if it's between Trinidad and Tobago, 100 times in 1 year is a lot. That means you're traveling twice a week. So when do you work? We just couldn't understand it. So I am happy to hear that this is something that is troubling to the chairman. And the chairman, you will receive the recommendation of the committee on this because we believe that while it doesn't impact the revenue situation of the company, I think that there's a messaging to the management staff and to the line staff. When the line staff get 20 free tickets a year, we understand pilots have additional privileges, but the privileges are this wide. It sends, I think Ms. Guy would understand, the messaging that you send to line staff, it's demoralizing. And for someone who is in a position of authority or senior position, you would expect them to use the facility, but apply some discretion. Not 100 individual flights in 1 year, and certainly for January to April 2030. 30 in 120 days is 1 every 4 days. That doesn't seem correct. That doesn't seem correct. I want to ask one more question on the issue regarding the positions that were vacant. At the previous hearing, or the initial hearing, forgive me, Mr. Chairman, you indicated that the committee was in the process, the entity was in the process of doing interviews for Chief Executive Officer and Chief Financial Officer. And I actually saw in the newspaper this weekend you were advertising for VP of Human Resources. I don't know if you're firing Ms. Guy, but I won't get into that. But could you update us on the status of your recruitment search for the CEO and CFO?
Chair, the CEO was identified coming out of the recruitment process. At this point in time, we're negotiating the terms and conditions of his contract. We believe that the contract is somewhere around 95% agreed between the parties, and therefore within 2 weeks we should be able to have, subject to the board agreeing to the terms and conditions of the negotiation, to finalize on that position. In terms of the CFO, we did conduct interviews. We've identified a person. We are reviewing his suitability, and we believe within 90 days from now, or in about 90 days, we should be able to have someone in that seat confirmed.
So you're saying that within the next 3 months, give or take, you'll have a brand new appointed CEO and CFO. And then perhaps you may have a permanently appointed VP HR also given that time frame. Because those are some of the key positions, and on the information provided, those are positions that are vacant. There are people holding the positions, but I think for the company to plan and to be able to attack some of the strategic challenges, you need people who are in the seat, who are comfortable in the seat and can do the job, and who meet all of the requirements. So we're very happy that you've made some progress on it, because I recognize the job market, it is what in Trinidad, but there's a lot of people out there who need work. There's a lot of people who need work. I would like to ask one more question. I don't have any more questions from other members, so it's up to me. I think that the other issue I want to ask, Mr. Chairman, had to do with the policy regarding your, we had asked at the first inquiry for your management accounts. We never received it as of now. We made one request, and that we simply asked from you, what is the status? Because you had, at that point in time, you had indicated several routes had turned around, and you were in the process, and that you would submit your management accounts when they're complete. So from this committee, because we wanted to understand the current status of the airline so that it would inform the committee's recommendations. We know you have to go through an auditing process, but we want to we've seen so many challenges with the airline. Just the amount of documentation I have is this amount of documentation I have on Caribbean Airlines in my folders here in my huge bag, that there's so many things that we would like to try to see how we can assist the airline with firm recommendations to fix some of these problems. But we need a current status of your financial, and it's not that we want to know your business, but it's important for us to understand where you are, because that is the base upon which you're going to build. Because I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, your view would be you would like to have Caribbean Airlines weaned off of the public purse. Could you help us with that?
Chair, we do have management accounts available for submission to the committee. We will provide those, but we ask the committee to note that those numbers are again subjected to audit and confirmation, and therefore we would ask the committee to kindly note that. And we would submit and add more to your extensive bundle from Caribbean Airlines.
Mr. Chairman, as the committee has indicated, the committee actively entertains requests from entities to keep particular information confidential, in particular anything to do with your financials, anything that doesn't require in terms of publishing, we will keep sacrosanct. That is the history of the Parliament, and members of this committee are bound by that, so that your documents are safe with us. All we are trying to do is to help the airline. All right, I just want to make a Senator Mark, please, before I start the wind up.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to ask the chairman whether these positions, particularly senior managerial positions, as provided to us, the terms and conditions, do they get the approval of the Minister of Finance or Corporation Sole? Or are these subject only to the board of the company?
Member, can you direct me to, would that be our submission stated for?
No, well, I'm asking a general question.
Okay.
I'm saying that in your submission, we have a number of managerial positions, senior and otherwise. We did not get, Mr. Chairman, the accompanying terms and conditions of these various positions. What I'm asking is whether the terms and conditions of engagement of senior managerial personnel at CAL, is it subject or are they subject to the approval of the Minister of Finance, or is it a decision taken exclusively by the board of CAL?
Member, I'm not able to comment about historically what may have happened, but it is the board's intention to communicate with our shareholders, because do remember that the government of Jamaica is a shareholder in Caribbean Airlines, and to ensure that they are fully satisfied that we have subscribed to due process and that persons do fit what is required under whatever governing terms and conditions across both jurisdictions.
Are you still on target to break even next year? Is that, remember you had given us your vision for turning around this airline. Are you still on target as it relates to the possibility of a break-even situation for CAL in the coming months or the coming year?
Member, unfortunately, one of the main destinations that we fly to would be major U.S. cities. And I think it's all known to all of us, the effects of Trump immigration policy and the effect that is having on travel. That being said, that we do remain hopeful that 2018 we would be in a position where we would have had significant improvements on our performance. And again, that is all subjective to how quickly, in my view, the recommendations that came forward out of the Lufthansa report can be implemented. That is of strategic importance to our P&L. That being said, if we do get to the point, and obviously I consider that CAL does have severe financial constraints, that we do assure the public that 2018 we would have significantly improved performance, and hopefully by 2019 get to that point where we're no longer at the doorsteps of the Ministry of Finance.
Do you see from your perspective as the chairman, do you think that the Lufthansa recommendations on the way forward in making this airline profitable and taking the appropriate actions, particularly like making it more lean and more efficient, would you be implementing those recommendations, reviewing those recommendations? What are we doing with this Lufthansa report? Is it going to be fully translated into action to turn around the airline within the shortest possible time?
Remember, in terms of reading the report, the recommendations are all fairly reasonable, and I might say not very difficult to implement. It's unfortunate that we cannot go back in time and implement what should have been done. We have to do what is required of us with great urgency. In terms of restructuring any business enterprise, there will be unpopular decisions, but we must and we have to if we want to continue to remain as an enterprise and no longer being a burden, if I might say, somewhat on the taxpayer. So yes, the expectation from this board and what the public can expect is that we would make the right decisions in terms of what is required for us to turn this airline around.
Yeah. Okay, so Mrs. Guy, I wanted to ask, these personnel that we have in the United States, on the one hand, you advise us that we cannot discriminate on the grounds of age, because that would be going contrary to the laws of the United States. But also we are being told that the law says that you can retire whenever you want, once you are fit, right? Our law says that, Carl, you should go at 60, or you must go at 60. Well, you talked about TALPA and their collective agreement. But how do you explain that when a person arrives at 60 in the United States, who is a United States citizen, we pay off that person all their benefits, their pensions, and they continue to work? Because this is the impression I'm getting from what you are saying, that if I'm working in the United States, I'm fit, should I not receive my package when I decide to retire at the age of 70, once I decide to go at that age? Or do I enjoy at the age of 60 whatever rights I'm entitled to under the CAL arrangement? So at 60 years, would I be entitled to enjoy my pension as a United States citizen? I'm trying to get clarification on that. I'm not too clear on what you had advanced.
Yes, I understand what you're asking. Member Mark, the legislation in the particular area is what we must go by. Okay. That must supersede what our internal policy is. So if the legislation in the United States is that there is no retirement age and that persons continue to work as long as they are fit and able and willing, then we must abide by that, and we cannot retire them at 60. They retire at the age they choose to retire.
Right.
So the person who is 73 or 78, that person is not getting a pension and a salary. That person is just getting a salary, and he or she continues to contribute to their 401k and so on. When they do leave active employment, then they will access their separation benefits.
Okay, all right, I understand, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Antoine?
In terms of Carl's executive and senior management salary ranges, etc., I'm seeing a number of allowances in addition to basic monthly salary, transportation allowance. I'm seeing a responsibility allowance monthly. Could you explain what is this responsibility allowance?
Is that in the last package? Can you point me to the...
It's Appendix 1, in terms of question 3. Page 1.
It's Appendix 1, a member on
For
the
in-camera
submission
session?
of the
Yeah.
4th of
4th of May.
May. Okay, yeah, right, I understand what you're asking. Because the incumbent in this position, he holds a substantive position and he's carrying out additional responsibilities and acting in a higher level position, then there is a responsibility allowance, which is loosely, we can say loosely acting allowance, because he's acting in a higher position, yes.
That is in addition to the acting allowance?
Acting/responsibility is the same. At this level, we term it, he's acting, but he gets a responsibility allowance for carrying out the additional responsibilities, and this would have been approved by the board.
Okay.
Senator Mark, one last question.
This is to the chairman again. Mr. Chairman, I just want to jolt your imagination again, or your memory. Your role is very critical in this task of returning this airline with your team to viability and profitability. But I also want to remind you that you need to have a very happy staff, a staff that is happy. And I just want to remind you that based on what we discussed at the last meeting or the last two meetings, I think it was close to 66% of your employees were very unhappy with the current management and direction that the airline was taking, coupled with, of course, the poor salary levels that they were subjected to. So I think it is something that as you move forward, you have to recognize that if this airline is to turn around, you have to have a very positive, happy, committed, and dedicated body of personnel to come along with you. But from what we have seen and what we have read, even from the surveys that Mrs. Guy shared with us, there appears to be a lot of dissatisfaction. So the managerial role is very critical. And it seems to me that there is need for a comprehensive overhauling of the managerial structure. And this is where I think that the Lufthansa report, and they did in fact throw up a structure that I find quite reasonable to examine and see to what extent we can implement, because you really want to turn around this airline in spite of the challenges posed by the United States in terms of its immigration policy. I think that we have a duty and a responsibility to push that forward. So I wanted to ask you in closing, what steps are you taking as the chairman to deal with employee dissatisfaction with your managers or your managerial team, and at the same time to deal with the low salary levels that they are complaining about? Those are the two last issues I'd like you to share with me.
Member, I note your comments and the advice that you have provided. Successful organizations are all built in terms of the commitment, the dedication, the loyalty of your employees. In the absence of that, you would have a crippled organization, if I can use that term. Unfortunately, at Caribbean Airlines, general staff have not had any review of their salaries, perhaps since inception, perhaps, and I'm subject to be corrected on that. And obviously, rightfully, they should be disgruntled. We have an obligation to ensure that our employees are treated in the best possible way that the company can afford or what the company can provide. And therefore, the board gave a commitment that this is a very urgent matter that we need to look at, because you're a part of a person commitment to our organization. It's not just the satisfaction in performing their job, but the satisfaction also encompasses part of their remuneration. And therefore, unless that issue is addressed, I could say quite frankly, we would not have an improved workforce that is happy to be at the organization. Persons who are happy go above and beyond their call and their duty because they feel a strong sense of loyalty to their employer. And that is what I believe we need to build at Caribbean Airlines. That loyalty and commitment will manifest itself in passengers having a desire to fly with us. We have said that airline travel, it's not about selling a seat, it's about selling an experience. And you provide the right experience for that passenger, they will want to fly with you at all times that they can. So yes, the board is addressing, we're reviewing. Obviously, we have to look at the limitations, but employees must be treated right, they must be treated fairly. I have to say that management have also addressed the concerns that we must reduce expenditure. We've seen that happening month over month. We must improve on the revenue side, and that is why you would see Caribbean Airlines have launched and will continue to launch new destinations that we believe would provide us with the best return in terms of the assets that we have to utilize. We do have a roadmap, and I don't want anyone to believe that we're operating Vike. There's a roadmap before us, and I do believe that if we stick on that roadmap, committing the resources, the time, the effort, that we can get to that point where we want to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of closing questions before we wrap up for today. Ms. Guy, what is the total pilot cohort at Caribbean Airlines in terms of numbers? I know your total staff is about 1,700 system-wide.
Staff is about 1,760. Pilot, it's we have about 219.
219.
Right, yeah, system-wide.
Because based on some of the submissions you provided us, we see that those 219 pilots account for over 40% of your wages and salaries bill.
Yes.
So that, and I would be the first to tell you, flying a plane is a special skill. Flying a plane is a special skill. I have much respect for the people who do it. Every time I fly on a plane, I always make my way to the front and say, Caps, thanks very much for getting us here where we are. But I think that in the context of where Caribbean Airlines is up, there's probably some low-hanging fruit, because you have a whole bunch of senior pilots over 60. And if you, I did some preliminary, forgive me for working with my Microsoft spreadsheet, and I said if you said over the next year, you get all of those off the payroll, Let's say you work out a plan next 12 to 18 months, you get all of those off the payroll. You might be surprised at how much flexibility we may have to offer some smaller increases to other members of staff. because that number of 40% is high for the industry. I looked at the United States Department of Transportation provides extremely detailed. It's much more than this when I printed. It's about this much on the operating performance of every U.S. airline. On an average, pilot salaries as a percent of total wages and salaries is in the 22-25% range. So Caribbean Airlines at 40 plus is way out of kilter. And as Mr. Chairman, as a board chairman, there's something that needs realignment. There needs to be some alignment. And I'm not knocking the pilots, but I'm saying you're running a business. The business is hemorrhaging money. It's not making money. It's taking money from every citizen walking the streets here to keep them going. So some accommodations have to be made. I like the chairman's indication earlier that some changes have to be made. And we need to look at ways in which we could, within the constraint of our available resources, try to see if we can cut costs. And then understand we operate in an industry, and let's try to see how close to the industry norms we are. In that metric, Caribbean Airlines is way out there. Way out there. Pilot salaries as a position as a share of total wages and salaries, Caribbean is way out of the scale. And that may have some legacy challenges with it. And I said, when I looked at the numbers that I have and I plugged them, and I said, if you drop those numbers off and then you graduate some of the junior ones up, you may find that you have some room to do something for the other staff, because your survey, probably 2/3 of your staff are discontented. But that is accurately reflected, because until they reach 60, forgive me. But I think that at 60, everyone is in gravy time. You can get your pension and then continue working and earning your full salary. So I think that's perhaps everyone is waiting to reach 60 and then continue working. But that is part of your problem. I think that the company has to look at that and say that has to stop forthwith. Phase that out within the next, and that will certainly form part of our recommendations. The retirement age is 60. If we need you on a needs basis, we will call you out on a short-term contract, not on a 3-year rolling. That can't work. Because there's too many people out here who need jobs, who would love to have the opportunity to serve in a national airline. And I went, and I'm an airline person, so forgive me. I went to Skytrax to see, Skytrax is one of the industry websites and I looked at the ratings of Caribbean Airlines, and I'll share. The ratings were pretty good. It's 6 out of 10. And I'm going to put it this way, some of the other bigger airlines who fly out of Trinidad get 3 out of 10. Okay, I won't call names. I don't want to embarrass anybody. That's not my role. But Caribbean Airlines ranked 6. Their score is 6 out of 10. But here's what's interesting. When you look at the spread, those who give it good ratings give it 1 or 2, 9 or 10 out of 10. Those who give it bad ratings give it 1 or 2. And when I looked at the numbers, forgive me for the numbers, those who give it 9 or 10, almost invariably the people who fly business class or first class. The people who fly coach have some really terrible things to say. So I urge you go look at Skytrack's website and see the customer reviews, what people have to say about the customer service, about the airline. And I think, and while it's not empirical, it's you log on, I'm a Skytrax user, I vote in their survey every year. Just like the Freddie Awards, they send me my ballot every year, because I am a frequent person who uses all of these services. So I'm a meticulous traveler. There's a few of us around this table that like that. So that at least there's some ray of hope that people are looking at it and people are saying, okay, the airline is certainly within the accepted standards, and let's build on that, Mr. Chairman. I think we have something that we could build on. It's not all doom and gloom, but some hard decisions have to be taken. You have to look at your costs and say, listen, this low-hanging fruit, this big number, we need to get this number down. How can we do that? Sit with your management and say, listen, your task is to figure that out and come back to the board with a recommendation. If I was sitting there, I would be very unpopular, because I would say I'm not entertaining any discussion until somebody brings me a plan to get that number down. And then tell me what the impact is, and we'll work out the impact. But we're at the stage now where the Permanent Secretary of Ministry of Finance is struggling to meet the commitments of all of the various ministries and departments. Caribbean Airlines is just another one now. And she would love, I am sure, to be relieved, to be relieved of any request for funding from Caribbean Airlines. And Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you'd love to be in that position, and I'm sure the staff would love to be in that position to say Caribbean Airlines is sustaining its own operations from its own revenues. Because the level of confidence that gives you this sustainability of the business is what we're trying to help you get there at. But the chairman and I are aligned. Some tough decisions have to be taken, and certainly because I'm not a politician, I don't care about being popular. Okay, I think some decisions have to be taken, and then you need to have tough conversations. One, you need to cut down that bill. Two, this mandatory working after 60, that has to stop immediatamente. It just can't work, not in this environment. Perhaps at another time, there's some easy things that you can implement to fix those problems, and I think that if you attach a time scale to it, it can be done. I don't think it's out of the realm of the capability of the good chairman and all of the wonderful people sitting before this committee. So, as I will say that now, I would like to invite closing comments from the chairman of Caribbean Airlines before we close this session.
Chair, again, on behalf of my management team, we thank the committee for having us here today. Again, if there's any misconception in any which way that the company might have deliberately withheld information from this committee, we extend our sincerest apologies for that. I wish to re-emphasize that it is the company and the board's duty, and we've recognized that, to provide whatever is asked of us for this committee to function in the manner prescribed. We will provide to this committee any further submissions requested of us today. I do recognize that in some of our submissions there's some inconsistency in terms of the responses provided. But I do say that in the backdrop of one, it's over 140 questions, and we've had very tight timelines to comply with. Notwithstanding all of that, we're looking forward to continue to working with the committee and receiving your recommendations for the improvement of Caribbean Airlines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I call on Madam Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Finance to give us a few closing comments and thoughts. You open the sessions. I want you to help close it.
Yes. On behalf of the ministry, I wish to thank the committee for inviting us to be part of this hearing, and we look forward to seeing Caribbean Airlines continue on its growth, on a growth path. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, Madam Permanent Secretary. I'm seeing you too often now. So I would like to thank the media and the viewing and listening audience for attending this session, and I think that it's been a productive session, and I want to say, Mr. Chairman, if in your conception as the chairman of the board, there's any things that you think, your thoughts on terms of recommendations for fixing the airline or things that need to be done, please share them with us. At the stage where we're refining our recommendations, your thoughts, the company's thoughts on what it would take to turn the airline around, what is required, what are the strategic actions need to be taken. Anything that you have in your conception that you think is workable, the committee would look at it and support it as needed. And that is something that we offer to all entities, because at the end of the day, this committee is here to help the entities in front of us. We know you're struggling, but you have challenges, but I believe the challenges are not insurmountable. They can be dealt with, and we look forward to working with you to try to see how we can both do our jobs, us helping you to help Trinidad and Tobago. So with that, I would like to say that this session is now adjourned. Thank you very much.